Today we're at Tyne Cot Cemetery, and we're here to take a look around and share some of the stories of the men who are buried or commemorated here. So yes, today we are at Tyne Cot Cemetery. Tyne Cot Cemetery is just a few kilometres northeast of Ypres. It is the largest Commonwealth cemetery in the world. There are 11,961 men who are buried or commemorated here at Tyne Cot. In 1917, from July to October, the Allied forces pushed forwards in the Third Battle of Ypres, sometimes referred to as the Battle of Passchedaele, the objective of which was to capture the ridges on the high ground surrounding Ypres. To do that, they would take an awful lot of casualties, and many of those men are here at Tyne Cot. So today we're going to take a look around, tell a bit of a story of some of the things within the cemetery, and also tell the story of some of the men that are here. On the 4th of October 1917, the 3rd Australian Division attacked across this land behind us to take a fairly heavily fortified German bunker position that was right here on the spot where Tyne Cot sits today. And perhaps unusually in the cemetery, they actually still have two of the bunkers here. This is one of the bunkers and the other one is just over on the other side of the cemetery. There is the third bunker position here, but we're going to get to that in just a minute. So here is one of the two bunkers in Tyne Cot, and you can see the damage that it has taken, probably from some heavy artillery fire towards the bunker during the attack. Here you can see the gun position, so that would probably been a machine gun position, and you can see the view that would have had across the land here. This would have been a very strong defensive position, and it's no surprise that the Australians took an awful lot of casualties in this piece of ground ahead of us, attacking towards this bunker position here. Again, there's a fair bit of damage in the bunker. There is something big has hit it right here, but this is one of the two bunkers that still remain. The other bunker is over there on the other side of the cemetery, just by those trees, and the third one we will talk about in just a minute. You can't actually get into this bunker anywhere now. They've closed it off so that people can't get inside the bunker, but this is the remains of the bunker here in Tyne Cot. Now, the third bunker here was fairly large, and so it was used as an advanced dressing station after it had been captured. Of course, an advanced dressing station sadly meant that sometimes they would be dealing with casualties that wouldn't survive. And so that is how the burial plots here at Tyne Cot first began. There were graves that were put next to the advanced dressing station here in the middle of the cemetery. Now, in the German Spring Offensive in 1918, this area was actually recaptured by the Germans in April. It was captured again by the Allies when they pushed forwards in September 1918. But this cemetery here remained, and after the armistice had been signed, it was greatly enlarged. Men who were found on the battlefields were brought in here from the battlefields by Passchedaele, by Langemarck, and this surrounding area were brought here, and that is why the cemetery started to expand so heavily from that point. Now, in our previous video, we talked about some of the battlefield conditions in this area around Passchedaele. Because of that, the thick mud and the fact this was ground that was fought over a couple of times and went back and forth, that did mean that a lot of the men were lost here. And some of them who weren't lost but found weren't able to be identified. And in fact, an incredible number of more than 8,000 of the men who are buried in this cemetery are unidentified. Now, there are some special memorials within the cemetery of men who are known to be buried in this area, but their graves are lost. So that will be when they were buried in the earlier part of the cemetery here, and then this ground was fought over again. It probably meant their graves were destroyed or the grave markers were lost. So those men are known to be buried here, but their exact grave position within the cemetery is unknown. So instead they have a memorial to mark that those men are here in the cemetery, but we don't know exactly where they are. So there are thousands of graves here at Tyne Cot, and actually as you walk the ground here, it makes you realise the horrors of the Great War. And I've got to admit, I came in the back of the cemetery there and walked down to just near the front where I am now, and it begged the question, how did this happen? How did thousands and thousands of men die here on the Western Front? It's just a tragic situation. As I said, there are thousands of men who are buried here, and unfortunately we don't have the ability, without making a multiple hours video, to even tell a fraction of the stories. But I've picked just a couple of men, and we're going to tell their stories here now. So the first story that we're going to tell is that of Clarence Smith Jeffries. He is buried just here in Tyne Cot Cemetery. He's near the front of the cemetery, or the back, depending on how you look at it, just near the bunker that I mentioned the Australians captured. Clarence Jeffries is an Australian recipient of the Victoria Cross. He was awarded that posthumously after his death during the Battle of Passchedaele in 1917. On the 12th of October 1917, Jeffries was leading his men in the attack on Passchedaele. They approached a strongly defended German position with a couple of bunkers and 50 metres of trench line. That position contained about 35 German soldiers, including 4 machine gun positions. Him and his men came under heavy fire. Jeffries realised the seriousness of that situation, and he quickly organised a bombing party to flank around the position. They quickly were able to take it out and continue to move forwards. At about 8:25, they approached another German position. Machine gun fire opened up across them, and it was at that point where Major Buchanan, their senior officer, was killed. That left Jeffries in command. Jeffries acted quickly and started to move forwards with some men to take out the machine gun position. He approached it from the west whilst the machine gun was actually firing in the other direction. But when the German machine gunner realised what was happening, he quickly turned and opened fire on Jeffries and his men. They ultimately had to retreat, leaving several of the men dead on the battleground that they'd been fighting over, including Clarence Jeffries. It was initially thought that Clarence's body had been lost, but a couple of years after the war, it was discovered in a battlefield grave. He was identified by the Australian numerals that were on the uniform and pencil initials of CSJ that were found on the ground sheet that his body had been wrapped in. He was brought here and reburied at Tyne Cot. For his bravery and his actions in taking out the German positions during the Battle of Passchedaele, he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross. The next man we're going to talk about is James Peter Robertson, who is buried just here in Tyne Cot. He is a Canadian recipient of the Victoria Cross. In November 1917, James Robertson's platoon was advancing towards a German machine gun position. It was causing heavy casualties. He decided to dash forwards into an opening on the flank and engaged in heavy combat with the men in that position. After a desperate struggle, he managed to kill 4 of the German soldiers. He then used the machine gun on the rest of the German soldiers as they ran away from that position. He then advanced with his platoon using the machine gun that he'd captured to cause more German casualties. Later during that same action, 2 of James' comrades were badly wounded in front of their trench line. He rushed out to get the first man and brought him back to the trench. Determined, he went forwards again, and it's as he was bringing the second man back to their own trench line that he was shot and killed. James Peter Robertson was awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions, and he's buried here at Tyne Cot Cemetery. The large bunker that was used as the advanced dressing station. Well, following King George V's visit to Tyne Cot in 1922, he suggested that the Cross of Sacrifice should be built over the top of that bunker, and that's exactly what's happened. So this piece here that we're looking at in front of us with the cross on the top is where that third bunker was positioned. It was used as the advanced dressing station, and some of the graves around it form the first part of Tyne Cot Cemetery. So here on the front you can see the wording. This was the Tyne Cot blockhouse captured by the 3rd Australian Division on the 4th of October 1917. And through the middle of the reef you can see the original wall of the blockhouse that sat here. So just next to the with the position where the bunker was, you see these graves, which are, a lot of them aren't kind of uniformed in much the same way that a lot of the graves are in the wider plots. They're a little bit more sporadic, unevenly spaced, different angles, some kind of graves sitting out in positions away from the others. Well, that is because these were the original graves that were built around this position before the cemetery was expanded to include all of the more uniformed grave positions through the wider part of Tyne Cot. Now, something which is a little unusual is that there are some German graves here at Tyne Cot. In fact, there are 4. There is only one that's identified, and that is for Otto Bieber, or Bieber, just here. But the rest of the German soldiers here are unidentified. These are men who would have been treated here in the dressing station, perhaps found on local ground, but then died of their wounds. And they're buried here at Tyne Cot, in and amongst the Commonwealth graves. Now, as well as the cemetery and the burial areas, Tyne Cot also has a memorial to the missing. There are nearly 35,000 men from the United Kingdom or New Zealand who were killed after the 16th of August 1917, who are remembered on the wall here. Men who have no known grave, who were lost during the fighting. They're remembered here at Tyne Cot. And we're going to go take a look at a couple of those and tell their stories now. So we've just come through to the back of the cemetery now, and this is the area where names of the officers and men of New Zealand who have no known grave are named on the walls here for the missing. Men like T. Barber, W. Barclay, E. Barnett, C.M. Bates, and hundreds more, thousands more. So we've come here to the wall that names all those men who are missing, and here on panel 70 we have Ernest Seaman. You'll see that VC next to his name. That means he was a Victoria Cross winner. Here on the wall named with the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, we're going to tell his story. Ernest Seaman was a soldier with the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, and he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions on the 29th of September 1918 during the 100 Days Offensive at the end of the First World War. The citation for his Victoria Cross reads, "For most conspicuous bravery and devotion to duty, when the right flank of his company was held up in a nest of enemy machine guns, he, with great courage and initiative, rushed forward under heavy fire with his Lewis gun and engaged the position single-handedly, capturing 2 machine guns and 12 prisoners and killing 1 officer and 2 men. Later in the day, he again rushed another enemy machine gun position, capturing the gun under heavy fire. He was killed immediately afterwards. His courage and dash were beyond all praise, and it was entirely due to the very gallant conduct of Lance Corporal Seaman that his company was enabled to push forward to its objective and capture many prisoners. King George V presented Ernest Seaman's Victoria Cross to his mother in a ceremony at Buckingham Palace in February 1919. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, taking a look around the Tyne Cot cemetery and telling the stories of just a few, literally just a handful of the men who are buried or commemorated here. This is a place that if you're in the Ypres salient area, you absolutely must come to. It is a place of great sadness, but a place that you need to visit to understand the cost of the Great War here in Ypres. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to see you guys on the next one.